Welcome to Manage Your Damn Money with Ben and Malcolm, where we trade in personal finance advice for entertaining conversations about money. And I'm still wondering if Drake is going to respond to Pusha T. Welcome to Manage Your Damn Money with Ben and Malcolm. And if you hear the sounds behind me, you know that we have our very first Malcolm live in studio audience, man. Look at us.
I'm excited. Are you guys excited?
Excellent. We have a really special show. Number one, obviously, because we have an in-studio audience for the very first time. And of course, the audience will have a chance to ask questions of Malcolm and also of our guest today. We'll be joined later on the show by our guest, Mr. Panama Jackson. He is the co-founder and senior editor at The Roots, Very Smart Brothas, now known simply as VSB. It's a popular blog people know about. We're going to talk to Panama about his work, how it came to be, and how he and his partner, Damon Young, turned a penchant for comedic woke writing into a career path. I'm really excited about this, Malcolm. How about you?
I'm pretty excited too. Like the crowd kind of changes everything for us.
Indeed,
like, I kind of feel like I should tweet Donald Trump and tell him our crowd is bigger than his. Like, that might actually get me blocked, but you know, why not?
Indeed. And of course, before we move on to headlines, today's episode, we're talking about taking your side hustle to the next level, which is why we have Panama Jackson. If you don't know the story, we're going to get into it a little bit later. He's going to explain to us what that means for him and what it can mean for other people. But as we do on every show, it is now time for headlines. Roseanne's cancellation to cost ABC tens of millions in ad revenue. Malcolm, this was a FoxBusiness.com piece in May of 2018 by Thomas Barabi. Of course, ABC's decision to cancel Roseanne after Roseanne Barr made a racist remark on Twitter will cost the broadcast network tens of millions of dollars in advertising revenue, according to multiple estimates. Roseanne was the highest rated series on broadcast television during its 9-episode revival run, averaging more than 10 million views per episode, so it was like a really big hit. Barr's sitcom earned $39.6 million in national advertising revenue since its debut on March 27th earlier this year, according to estimates from tracking service iSpot. And then ad tracker Kantar Media estimated the show's total advertising haul was at $45 million this season and projected that the next season could have fetched $60 million or more, and that was according to The Wrap. Companies that advertised on Roseanne included Pepsi, Netflix, McDonald's, and Microsoft. Standard Media Index, another industry tracking service, estimated that advertisers spent an average of $167,000 per 30-second ad during the show in April, which made Roseanne ABC's most expensive show. Now, Malcolm, I don't know if you realized, that happened on the exact same day that Starbucks was doing their diversity racial bias training.
I'll be honest, I didn't realize that until you texted me the irony.
Okay.
Like I didn't notice it. But at the same time, they are who we thought they were. They being Roseanne, right? Like, I mean, if you actually paid any attention to her Twitter feed, it's been nothing but, racist tweet after tweet after tweet after MAGA tweet after tweet. Like, so it's just like, who's really surprised? Right. The surprising thing to me, though, was she didn't realize who her boss was. So she made an overtly racist tweet about a black woman working for Barack Obama's White House, not realizing that she works for a black woman who runs the studio at ABC.
Right.
So, like a little bit of common sense goes a long way. Like,
Absolutely.
just, keep that at home.
Absolutely. And I actually didn't know that she was as wild as I realized she was after the fact. Roseanne was kind of, in my mind, a figment of my imaginary past. And I asked my wife when the show came back on, like, who asked for this to come back? Like,
so was Roseanne on
like
TGIF or something? Is that how far back that goes?
It was on CBS.
Okay,
I think, if I remember correctly.
Like that show Dinosaur or something.
Yeah, it was.
Little...
It was in there, and that was.
See how we can't even figure out when Roseanne was on? That tells you she should have stayed where she was.
Now.
But the show wasn't for us, though. So to be clear,
I watched it because my wife watched it.
Oh, don't run under the bus. Okay.
It was my wife's fault. It was actually a pretty good show. Interestingly enough.
Okay.
But it is kind of crazy because there's a lot of lost jobs. I think I saw one estimate of somewhere between 100 and 200 jobs just when you count all the way up and down.
And that's the part that really matters, right?
Yeah.
That TV crew,
Right.
it's going to take them a while to get placed somewhere else. I actually saw one of the writers on her show tweeted out like the morning of.
Right.
He was so excited because he just got bumped to head writer on Roseanne for season 2. And then like 4 hours later, it was like life comes at you fast. Like, you know. And so people like that matter more because Roseanne's going to be all right? Like she's already got her F-250 paid for with the gun rack and all that. Like, so she's going to be okay, right? So it's everybody else that actually matters in the grand scheme of things.
That's true. That's true. And the reason why I brought up Starbucks is they actually did it was a 4-hour session involving 175,000 workers at 8,000 locations. And it had employees and managers reportedly working in small groups to discuss their experience of race and studying issues like implicit bias. Starbucks has called the day training a mere step towards building a safer space for all of its customers. The company is planning an additional training or additional trainings and other events, according to NPR. Even they admitted that the one training probably couldn't do all of the work. And I think I saw somewhere else that the CEO compared it to, or he said there's been no comparable corporate action, which I think is, from my memory, is true. So the question that I have for you, Malcolm, is we have two instances where in like very large corporations like ABC and then also Starbucks decided to take action which would hurt their bottom line based on social issues. And we always talk about the fact that this world that we're living in America is moving towards this place where companies occupy this weird space between like selling things but also having a responsibility to the public in terms of social issues. What do you think is happening here?
So I think the one piece that got lost in there when you were summing it up is that both of these companies took action that same day.
Right.
So not only did it happen, you know, not at 9 a.m. when people are like actually starting to pay attention, you know, first thing in the morning.
Right.
These things happen like in the middle of the day.
Yeah.
And then immediately before that day was over, in both cases, the person at the helm took action and said, nah.
Right.
No.
We're not doing that.
Right. So you do have to think that in this social media world where everybody but the NFL realizes, like, I can't just be out here winging it anymore. And
literally everybody but the NFL.
Right. That's a whole different show.
Right.
You know, like, dude, it's to the point now where I'm even considering, like, do I really want to tell people I'm a Cowboys fan? Because Jerry Jones is just out here anyway.
Right.
So I think because of how quickly in both cases those CEOs or presidents or whatever took action,
right,
it shows you just how serious it is to the bottom line.
Right.
Like, it's like, okay, we can't even have this lingering longer than
a few
Drake's
hours.
response to Pusha T. This has got to be like immediate. I can't take any chances.
Right.
So.
Absolutely. It's interesting because companies used to occupy a space that was removed from the social sphere.
Right.
They didn't have to participate in the March on Washington in 1960s. They didn't have to march with Martin Luther King. But now there's more and more expectation that you as a company, as a money-making institution, participate and take one side or the other. Do you think in the way that Starbucks shut down a whole bunch, 8,000 stores, and the way that ABC cut a show within a couple of hours after their headliner, said some inappropriate stuff, do you feel like corporations are more and more going to be willing to take these kinds of stances, even though it's hurtful to their bottom line?
Yes and no. Like, I feel like the companies that should take those stances won't, and the ones that will probably don't need to. Like, I might even lose some people in saying this, but like, Starbucks doesn't really have a race problem.
Right.
They just have stupid people problem, right? Like, calling the police on some guys for hanging out at Starbucks is that individual lady's issue, right? Not Starbucks as a whole.
Right.
The CEO of Starbucks is running for president, and the only reason he might not get there is because he's even more outrageous than Bernie Sanders. So, like, they don't really have that kind of issue. Starbucks isn't going to solve America's race problem. Like, good for you. I appreciate you trying. But the issue is really going to be the companies who should be taking these issues on are still going to be the same old stodgy, we do what we want. And, so. Interesting.
Do you see these kinds of moves influencing the way business is done in any other kinds of ways?
Maybe not. I don't know. The skeptic in me refuses to allow the optimist in me to say anything
too happy
about it, because it's just one company.
Right.
And it's also a company based in Seattle by a dude that goes running without shoes on. So I'm not really that, like, good for him.
Right.
He didn't have to do it.
Right.
But at the same time, it's not the same as like the CEO of a company on Wall Street coming out and shutting down the bank for 4 hours to do unconscious bias training. Now, if that happens, I'm going to fall out of my chair and we can have a different conversation. But for now, it's like, thanks.
Okay. And on that pessimistic note, we want to remind people that you can listen to past episodes of Manage Your Damn Money on Apple Podcasts, SoundCloud, Stitcher, Google Play, and Spotify. Please leave us a review on any of those platforms. That helps us go up in the ratings and helps other people find our show. Of course, if you have questions for myself or Malcolm, or you want us to cover a particular topic, send it to us, info@manageyourdamnmoney.com. And you always catch us on social media, Twitter and Legram. Malcolm, what's your handle?
At Malcolm on Money.
And of course, mine is at MYDM1. And you can always catch us on Facebook, that data thing. Facebook.com/Manage Your Damn Money. We're going to take a quick music break, but when we come back, we're going to talk about the conversation at hand, taking your side hustle to the next level. We also have a guest, Mr. Panama Jackson of Very Smart Brothas. This is Manage Your Damn Money with Ben and Malcolm. We will be right back. Welcome back to Manage Your Damn Money with Ben and Malcolm. We are here back at Montgomery Community Media, and we have our very first live in-studio audience. Thank you to you guys for coming, and for giving me that power and that energy. Like, I feel it when you guys are, like, clapping and stuff. But anyways, on this episode, the conversation at hand, taking your side hustle to the next level. We've talked about it on our show. Millennials, Generation Y, and Z are all too familiar with side hustles. Whether it's walking your neighbor's dog or painting canvases on the weekend, many people are spending more time on things that makes them happy and have the potential to bring them extra income. On this episode of Manage Your Damn Money, we're taking a look at side hustles, and we'll walk through the history after this segment of Mr. Panama Jackson's creation of the super popular culture blog, VSB, also known as Very Smart Brothas. So Malcolm, really quickly, I think it makes sense to just reorient everyone to this conversation that we have pretty frequently on the show. The definition and evolution of side hustles, or as old people might say, sidelines. Side hustles are typically extracurricular activities which one engages in regularly and may have the potential to earn extra income. UrbanDictionary.com defines this way: sideline that brings in cash, something other than your job. So Malcolm, some basic steps to a side hustle or creating a side hustle. Step one, you have to identify a sustained point of interest. I think ours is money. And then step two, engage with the point of interest or activity regularly enough to improve your skills and become good at it. I think we're like getting better at this here thing.
I would hope so. We've been at it for a while.
I was looking up an episode for somebody the other day, and I was like, oh my God, this was a year ago.
You know what? Quick diversion. I realized we were finally like out of the basement where we used to be when I saw that we could get a studio audience. Like I was like, oh, this is real.
That was
like,
the moment.
Actually, yeah.
Indeed.
Like 7 years later.
Right.
Yeah.
Step three, you have to figure out to monetize, you have to figure out the primary point of value for you, for your clients, or for your customers. And that's when you're trying to actually turn it into something that makes money. And then, of course, step four, structuring your side hustle around your life to reach consistency and frequency, Malcolm. So real quick, Malcolm, I always periodically have the opportunity to kind of reflect back on the development of Manage Your Damn Money. And like you said, we've been at this for a little while now. And it's interesting. It's like the side hustle has become something that's consistent in our lives. We do this at least, usually twice a month, shoot a couple of shows each one. So, I mean, based on the list that I made, I think we're doing okay.
I would say so.
Okay.
Yeah. By my standards, I don't know what that means for anybody else who's on the outside looking in.
Right.
Yeah, sure.
For other things that you do, Malcolm, because I don't think people know this, you spent some time. I don't know how successful you've been, but you're doing the financial.
If I did it, I was very successful at it.
If you're doing this financial planner certification,
Right.
But you've also spent some time trying to learn how to code.
Right.
I don't know if you've been successful with that or not.
School trumped teaching myself how to tie my shoes. Like it really is like another language,
right?
And I don't have time to learn another language.
Okay.
Right now. So it had to get put on ice.
Okay, so that one got put on ice.
Yeah.
But a question for you: how do people really know if they found the thing they want to spend the extra time on when they come home from work, or they're finished with whatever they have to do?
I think probably when you can't stop thinking about that other thing while you're at work.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Right? Like if you're spending time at work searching for ideas and information on whatever that thing is,
right.
That's a pretty good indication that, that thing is a little more important to you.
Absolutely.
Like there's always going to be something that you are passionate about, but unfortunately, like that dream gets deferred and then deferred and then deferred and then it becomes like man, I wish I had done that thing.
It sounds like my student loans.
That's Sally Mae's side hustle. See, that's somebody else's vision. You gotta focus on your focus.
Right, for sure. I think for me the main thing is it's kind of like natural selection. Whatever has your interest over a long period of time,
sure,
is probably the thing that you're like interested long enough to continue to do it for another 5 to 10 years.
I am very much fortunate that my passion and my pocket somehow like align, and like the thing I do for a living is actually the thing I'm passionate about.
Right.
Because otherwise, like I'd be like spinning my wheels trying to figure out like, all right, this side hustle's got to be the one.
Right.
Because I probably had like 40 side hustles since I was like 12. So at some point it's got to hit, right?
Right. Absolutely. Well, we want to remind people today we're talking about taking your side hustle to the next level. When we come back from this next music break, we're going to welcome Mr. Panama Jackson to the show. Panama is the senior editor at VSB, media property of The Root. And we're going to talk to him about the development of his blog, which is now like a full-on media website, and he does it full-time. We want to remind people you guys to catch past episodes of Manage Your Damn Money on Apple Podcasts, SoundCloud, Stitcher, Google Play, and Spotify. Of course, leave us a review there and give us a rating. If you have a question for Malcolm or for myself or wants to cover a particular topic, send it to us, info@manageyourdamnmoney.com. And of course, follow us on the gram and Twitter at MYDM1. Malcolm, what's yours?
At Malcolm on Money.
And of course, you can catch us on Facebook, facebook.com/manageyourdamnmoney. We will be right back. Welcome back to Manage Your Damn Money with Ben and Malcolm, where we are enjoying our first live in-studio audience. But today's conversation at hand, taking your side hustle to the next level. We are joined at the table at MYDM. We are big fans of side hustles turning into money-making enterprises, and that's why we are honored to have on set with us Mr. Panama Jackson, senior editor at The Roots, VSB, or Very Smart Brothas. It goes back and forth, he said. Welcome to the show, sir.
Appreciate it. Thank you for having me. I'm glad to be here. This is awesome.
Absolutely, absolutely. Now, first things first, you stood cheek to cheek with Oprah, so I need you to just give me a little dust. Give me a little dust, brother. Wait a minute.
I'm still glowing off that one.
Absolutely. But we're happy to have you. Can you just explain to us what Very Smart Brothas is and what you do on a day-to-day basis?
I mean, VSB is it's a website, started out as a blog that's dedicated to general blackness, shenanigans and blackness.
Okay.
Blackness, and pretty much all things black. Entertainment, pop culture, and I mean, typically whatever's happening in our community or in the world at large. But, typically we try to stay into the Washington Post called us the blackest place on the internet, so now we're trying to live up to that.
Blacker than Black Twitter?
That's what they said.
That's
I mean, it's like, if Cardi B says it is fact, so if the Washington Post says it must be true.
Well, she don't dance now. She make money moves, so she knows.
Right.
Indeed. Well, we're talking about side hustles on this show. Before we get into your story, what way or what do you see for side hustles for kind of like the millennial and under generation? Like, what do you see that or what happening in that space for kind of that generation?
I mean, it seems as if everybody has a side hustle now.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, if you're a person who only has a regular job, it seems like you're hustling backwards now, I guess. So, I mean, the good part about that is everybody's really seeking out their passions, right? Like you're just talking about, what you really love doing. So it's good that everybody's giving that a shot. I'm guessing maybe people are broker longer than they used to be, but, you can't make an omelet without breaking a few eggs, so,
Right. Absolutely. Now, we're here because you have a very specific experience. You shared with us that you've been doing Very Smart Brothas for 10 years,
Yes.
which is crazy, a full decade. Talk to us about how it started, how old you were, where you were, what you were doing. Take us to that moment.
Yeah, so VSB started in March 30th, 2008, but that was after, so the actual inception of VSB happened in like 5 minutes.
Okay.
Damon and I were literally just on G-Chat, like, hey, we actually decided we were gonna write a book together. We're like, we should write a book.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then it was like, but before we do that, we should probably start a website.
Right.
Okay. And then we have a third co-founder, Liz Burr, who I hit up on G-Chat like, hey, we want to start a website. She said, what's the name of the website? And I went back to Damon and said, we need a name for a website. He said, how about Very Smart Brothas? I was like, cool. Went back to Liz and said, verysmartbrothas.com. She was like, all right. And I went and bought the domain. That's literally the inception of VSB. It happened that quickly.
That took like 20 minutes.
It took less than that. I promise you it was less than that. But Damon and I had been, we had individual blogs for years before that. I started blogging on my actual 25th birthday.
Okay.
My first writing ever in that space was on my 25th birthday. And at the behest of several friends that I had who were blogger in that community, and Damon started before I did. So we'd both gotten fairly burnt out on the actual writing of it. And then, but we decided we're gonna write a book together about relationships because almost every piece that we'd written about relationships got lots of comments. So we're like, let's exploit this.
Right.
And so when VSB actually first got started for the first several years, it was a relationship blog.
Okay.
We were those guys, but we were the guys that liked women. We weren't the ones that were like telling women what to do, what not to do kind of thing.
Steve Harvey model.
We weren't perfect, don't get me wrong. We were still young dudes, right? So there was some of that like unintentional latent ignorance baked into a lot of things that we did, but we managed to grow.
I'm glad you put that disclaimer out there so you don't get #MeToo'd up here.
No, that wouldn't be my life anyway. But that's a bridge way too far from what we were doing. But ultimately we realized at some point that we wrote, and we ended up writing a book. Our book was called "Your Degrees Won't Keep You Warm at Night: The Very Smart Brothas Guide to Dating, Mating, and Fighting Crime." So. But even in that, it was just a book about observations that we have as men about relationships and dating.
Okay.
But at some point, we realized we had said everything we needed to say about dating and relationships, and it got pretty boring. And that space was kind of oversaturated by a lot of men. Oddly enough, men took over the relationship space. And we got out of that and just started writing about what was going on in the Black community. I'm a music person, so I wrote a lot about music, and we wrote a lot about what's going on in society and stuff. So
Okay. So real quickly, you were that was still kind of relatively early in 2008 in the blogosphere world. Did you think it was something that was gonna last when you first started?
We had no plan. We had no idea what we were doing with this. I mean, we were just like, hey, let's do it. All right, cool. It was really that simple. There was no real strategy or plan. The only plan that we did have was that we were gonna update every day and at like midnight. That was our only strategy.
Okay.
So you guys were literally putting out a piece every day?
Yeah.
Jesus.
He would take a week, then I would take a week, then he would take a week, then I would take a week. So yeah, every day. So we'd write basically 5 straight days, and then
that's dedication.
We'd alter.
Right.
Yeah.
So when did you guys kind of get the feeling though that it was clicking? Because you, like you said, you've been doing it for a while. You put it out there. You saw that it stuck. But when did you actually realize like folks were taking you seriously?
When we dropped the book, really was when everything changed. So the book dropped in 2011, and right after that, like we ended up in all these major publications. We ended up on BET. We were in the Washington Post for the first time. We were in Jet. Like we ended up getting profiled in all these places. And I think that's when we realized, okay, maybe we have something here that we can actually do something with. We didn't see it ending up where it is now. That was never really where we thought we were going with it. But we did decide to level up at some point and say, all right, we can take this serious. I had a full-time job the whole time. Damon at some point stopped. He was writing full-time way before I was. So like many, many years ago, Damon went full-fledged with the writing as a career. But we weren't making money off VSB. He was making money through writing for other outlets and stuff like that. He was writing to keep the lights on.
Right.
I worked on the Hill, so for years, and I had so it was 2011 was the year we made our first leap. 2014 was when we redesigned the site and made the second real leap into closer to where we are now, where we're like we can really do something with this.
Okay. So you talked about the book, and I guess you can give me the steps along the way. At what point did you guys, you realize it's serious? You realize the comment strings on your site are like 80 miles long. At what point was it, okay, we can actually turn a profit, and what were the steps to turning a profit on VSB?
We never made a single dime off of VSB at the actual site, for real, and probably until like 2015, maybe, and that was through ads on the site. Right. And let me just say one thing, because I don't know that we do this enough. Like we would not be where we were with this without our comment section. That literally is the reason why we managed to get where we were, because that section amplified us in such a way, and it became such a safe space that people recognized they could come here and have those conversations without being trolled. Like, so, at some point, if we ever do the VSB documentary, like half of it has to be about our comment section. Right. But anyway, so
that's saying a lot though, because the trolls live in the comment section.
But our comment section was very good at policing itself. Like we had people who were very concerned about losing the space that we had, so we got folks out of there real quickly. And Damon and I didn't have to do it. Other people took care of that, because when you have a good space, you have a good space and you don't want to lose it. And for many people, it was the only space that they were in, because everybody doesn't live in DC or New York or Atlanta, where they were having these conversations with people like themselves freely, openly, and had a real back and forth with folks that was substantive and wasn't based on nonsense. So
steps to revenue though.
Yeah, so we started making money through ads, but it wasn't very much money. We made money outside of that doing speaking engagements, hosting parties, doing events. Like I'm a party promoter on the side too. I have side hustles still, even though
your side hustle has a side hustle?
My side hustle is my full-time hustle now, but I have side hustles on the side of that. Right. But we were making money in other ways because of VSB. Being on VSB gave us a platform in other places. So we were writing in all these different outlets that would pay us to do things. And eventually we got into a space where we were able to take it and use it, leverage it for the property that it was, in order to turn it into full-time jobs.
Okay. And now, real quick, something that stands out in my mind, I just remember this in my own life, seeing it. You guys won some kind of like grant or artist thing. Yeah. And I feel like that was before the root.
Yeah, it was.
So take me to that moment where you guys got the grant artist thing. I want to say it might have been out of Pittsburgh or something like that. And then transition to what the root relationship is and all that.
Right. So in 2014, VSB had a complete redesign and makeover. And that was because Damon applied for and won a grant from the Heinz Foundation in Pittsburgh. Right. It was $15,000, and it enabled us to redesign the site in a very professional way and to bring in writers and bring in new people to lend their voices to the site. Because while, like, Damon and I are the voices of VSB, like, we're the faces of VSB, but we also realized we needed other people's opinions and voices. And what's the point of having this great platform if you can't amplify anybody else? Right. So we actually plucked people right out of the comment section and had them become writers for VSB. Like, almost everybody that was writing for VSB was somebody that had commented on VSB at some point. We were like, I like that person. Right. And I would email them, or Damon would email them like, hey, have you ever thought about writing? If you have, we have a great opportunity for you, and we can actually give you a little money to do this. So that was the second real big, like, leveling up of VSB, and it's the one that put us in a position to get where we are now. So in 2016, we got approached by a media company about purchasing VSB. Right. And that wasn't The Root or Univision who owns The Root. Okay. It was a different company that we were in talks with. Those talks, they got pretty far, but then they kind of fell apart. And when they fell apart, or I guess at some point they'd fallen apart, and then Univision or the folks who were under The Root were like, hey, we're interested in bringing you guys in to be a vertical of The Root. Right. The timing was right. Where Damon and I are in our lives, we're both family men, we have responsibilities, and professionally it seemed like a good decision for us. So we decided to pull the trigger on it, and they acquired us. We became employees of the company. So, we negotiated salaries and contracts and benefits and all that kind of stuff. Okay. But that's how we effectively went from being a blog. And I quit my job. So I quit my job in July of last year, July 2017, after 14 years. I quit that job, walked away, and I've been doing VSB ever since. And it's been awesome.
So let's run that one part back real quick. You were doing VSB for 10 years, or almost 10 years, and doing your other main job, quote unquote, for 14 before the side hustle got you out to where you are
I'm
now.
an epic multitasker. Okay. So, and Lord knows if anybody, well, I don't work there no more. I mean, my day job was my office for writing, because of my, I effectively, I try to be real about that. I would go home and write sometimes, but when the mood hits, it hits, and I'm a creative. So when you gotta strike while the iron's hot. And, I'm also a very quick writer, hence many typos before we had editors. And I would knock things out, and then I would, hop back on and do my job. But I also had a job where I was good at being able to, I worked on money actually, and a lot of money stuff too. So I was able to do my job and do VSB, and the two worlds didn't collide. I would never put VSB above my day job in a time when I needed to be doing my day job. Like, there were times when I was pretty absent from VSB because I had things going on. So I knew how to prioritize and be, not get myself fired.
It's very important. It's very important.
Yeah. But so you guys just now got to the point where you sold basically less than a year ago.
Yes.
So how long before that were people actually willing to take you seriously when you said VSB is what you do, and they were like, all right, this dude doesn't have a job? Like, because when I hear people tell me they're a blogger or they're like a social media influencer or something, I'm like, all right, cool. Like, this person doesn't have a job. Like,
well, perception is an amazing form of reality, right? So everybody thought we were only doing VSB full time anyway.
Okay.
For one, people wonder if Panama is actually my real name, which it is not. And then they also think that, like, I have friends that I know from college who actually thought that I didn't have a day job in DC. Like, they thought VSB was all I was doing. So people assumed that we were getting paid for this, like, as an actual job for years. Like, it was just, I think because at some point it became fairly ubiquitous in terms of, like, Black conversation spaces. Like, if, I'm not saying we were the leading Black conversation starter, but if there was a conversation going on about issues in Black America, there's a really good chance that we were involved in it somehow. Okay. So because of that, I think a lot of people more or less assume that that's all we were doing because we were so present in so many different ways. And we were on the speaking circuit, we've spoken at major universities before we, got to the root. I mean, we've spoken at Harvard, Princeton, Yale, FAMU, Morehouse. Like I've made the circuits before we even got to the root.
Real quick, tell me about the transition. You were, kind of side hustling on your own with VSB, and now you got kind of effectively bought out by a media company, and then which now employs you. Talk about the transition from that to the other one, because I read a piece by Damon, I think, a couple of days ago, where he said he was like at a diner and he's bad at like keeping appointments or something like that. But anyway, but what's the transition been like, on your own to now under the umbrella of a media company?
The transition's been great for us because, so the editor-in-chief of The Root is actually a friend of both Damon and I. Anyway, we actually had her helping out with VSB years ago. Okay. So she knows what we're doing. She knows who we are. She knows what we can do, what we bring to the table, and she wants us there. And ultimately gives us the opportunity to be ourselves. Like it's been a great transition for me, and I know for Damon as well, because we're basically just doing what we've been doing, except now we're getting a check for that. Right. And I don't have to do another job at the same time. Like I can literally focus all my attention on doing that. So it's been pretty easy. The only difference is now we have coworkers, and we're actually part of like Slack discussions all day long with all these people at the Root, trying to figure out what stories people are going to write and all that. It's more like I'm happier. I'll say that. Like I'm a much happier person. I've always been happy, but like happier in that I don't have to concern myself with this other job that, while it was a good job, is not one that I wanted to be doing. Right. But because of my family and my life, I needed to support, my household.
So without getting too much into your personal business, this is a money show. So a question I have for you is, how much of you guys' personal money did it take to get this thing from passion to side hustle to then side hustle actually paying your bills?
Not much, to be honest with you, because I paid for the only cost you have for a website is the domain, right? The domain and like server space. That was, at some point our traffic got so big that we were spending like $250 a month on the server space, but the domain itself was like $20 a year. Yeah. So whatever 250 times 12 is, and add 20 to that, like there wasn't a lot of personal costs in the way of actually maintaining it, because it's a website, and our commodity is our thoughts. Okay. And we were selling merchandise. At some point we were selling merchandise. We actually struck up a deal with the company to push the I Love Bougie Black Girl shirts and stuff like that. So we had income. Right. We actually had small like bits of income here and there. So we were able to juggle. There was no net loss. I'll say that there was no net loss on actually running VSB before it became our main job.
Okay, excellent. We have a live studio audience here, as you can see in front of you.
Dude, awesome.
If someone's here and they're trying to figure out what their side hustle could be, what would you say are the first steps to figuring out what that is?
What do you like doing, and what do you like doing that you can continue to do when you don't feel like doing anything else? Like, the biggest thing about having a side hustle that can actually pay you is it has to be a real passion, right? Like, it has to be something I love writing. I love creating these conversations. I love doing that. Like, we were doing that when nobody was reading. And it just so happens that people read now, and we have an audience, and people like Oprah pay attention. And, it's, part of them. One of the great things about side hustles or turning that into something is being able to take the small victories and make them feel like huge victories so that it keeps you pushing forward. Like, I met Oprah. Oprah called me, right? Oprah left me a voicemail. I have a voicemail from Oprah on my phone right now.
Snuck that in there.
It's not even humble brag. This is facts. Right? Like, it ain't humble bragging if this is a fact, right?
You got that saved in like 3 different places.
I've sent it to my whole family. Everybody has it. But it's like, things like that can happen, right? And you never know who's paying attention. Like, people that I know, love, and respect have hit me up to say, I'm a fan of yours. Right. And that gives you motivation. Like, it also changed the way that I approach a lot of the way that I write. So I do a lot of media writing, music writing, movies and stuff like that. But I'm also what I found out is that I'm much better when I'm either praising things that I enjoy. I'm writing about things that I really enjoy, not just criticizing everything. And what happens is when I'm writing about things I enjoy, those people seem to read this stuff, and then they all respond back. Like, Clifton Powell, like the greatest B-list black movie actor of all time as far as I'm concerned. I just mentioned his name in a post I wrote. I said there needs to be like some Clifton Powell Achievement Award for something. This man emailed me. Like, I'm like, yo, I got an email from Clifton Powell right here. But, you know, I talked to Raphael Sadiq. This man read something I wrote about him, and he was like, yo, I love that article that you wrote about me. I'm like, this is crazy because you're like one of my idols musically. So it's like, those are small things that, you know, and those things happen, so they can happen. But you learn that to take those small victories and be like, dang, that was kind of awesome. Right. I can do that again. That can happen again, or whatever the next step up is. So, you know, Oprah calls. I didn't think I'd ever meet her. Right. You know, it's like, okay, this was a very cool moment, and I got to that happened to my family because everybody in my family and friends got to experience somebody they know getting a call from like one of the most famous people that ever existed, as far as I'm concerned. Right. But then I meet her and she remembers that she called me. So she remembers that, and then we take a shot. Like, you know, it's like, all right, now what? You know what I'm saying? Like, now what do you do with this? Because, and what that did for me was create new goals. Like, I don't even have goals, to be honest with you. It's like, dude, I don't know what can happen, so I'm just riding this train. Right. And once you get to that place, it's all fun and it's all enjoyment. And you're like, I'm really living in my truth. I'm living in what I want to be doing. I'm enjoying it. This is fun, and who knows where it can take me. And I'm not limiting myself to these goals that I'm just coming up with. I'm like, we're going wherever this goes. And thus far, because Damon and I never really created a space we never set goals for ourselves. Right. Largely because we don't know what we're doing. But, you know, that's also been a very big help for us because there was no lane for us to try to find, follow.
Excellent. Well, we want to remind people you're listening and watching Manager Dan Money with Ben and Malcolm. We're going to take another music break, and when we come back, our in-studio audience is going to ask some questions of Malcolm if they have a money question, and of course Panama if they would have a question about his story or what they're doing with their side hustle and how they can meet Oprah like Panama. When we come back, we're going to ask Panama what his real name is. This is Manager Dan Money with Ben and Malcolm. We will be right back. Welcome back to Manager Dan Money, where we are still excited to have our first live in-studio audience. We're talking to Panama Jackson, who's enlightening us on what it means to take your side hustle to the next level. We're having a very first in-studio audience question session. Questions will be for either Malcolm about money, if you have a pressing money question, or Panama, of course, who shared a lot about his story. The first question we have comes from Yetunde. Yetunde, what's going on?
Hi, my name is Yetunde, and I'm from New York originally. And my question is for Panama. What article had the most drama on your site, like the most comments, the most backlash, or positive or negative? What article really just lit up?
That is a very good question because we have probably written 3,000 to 4,000 articles. So there is one that really, I ain't gonna do that though. So I can't. That one's out of bounds. That's us old. That's old Kanye.
Now I have to know.
Yeah. So I wrote the article about my mother. That was an article that, despite the fact that most people might think, I wrote an article about my mom and the relationship I had with her after, because of Trump, which has caused a lot of personal drama for me in my own life. And, we're working on, me and my mom, we're going to get it together eventually. Still my mother. But you would think that there was a very supportive audience from most people, but there were a lot of people that were really not rocking with me because of my stance on pushing away from my mom. I was like, how could you do that? I did a lot of radio spots and a lot of discussions with people who were very, they just thought that I went too far. You just don't do that kind of thing. In terms of, let's see, what's a recent article that actually caused drama or uproar? I wrote something really dumb multiple times, but there was something I wrote really dumb a couple years ago about male birth control. And there was these studies that were happening about male birth control, and they stopped the test because men were experiencing side effects that they didn't like. And I jokingly, tone deaf, wrote of course they should. If nobody wants side effects, we shouldn't have to deal with that stuff, right? And so I wrote that partially joking, but also it's look, side effects suck. Nobody wants to deal with those things. I mentioned in the article women shouldn't have to deal with that stuff too, but it was written from a guy's perspective. I'm like, dude, I don't want side effects for suckers. I don't want that. And obviously that was taking exactly how I wrote it. I went, I have a process that I use a lot of times when I write on things that are potentially explosive when it comes to discussions that have to be are women-centric, right? So I will let my fiance read it. I will let family read it. I will let friends of mine that are women who I trust to not let me catch it out here. And because I'm blessed to have a group of friends in my life, particularly women who many of them write for VSB or close friends like that, who I know have my best interest in mind. I also just don't want anything out there that's just dumb, or just doesn't create a real conversation. I didn't run that by anybody. No. I just ran it. I was like, man, publish. And, and I rightfully caught a lot of flack for it. The next day I wrote a whole apology and explanation of where I was wrong and why I was wrong and what I learned from it. And I caught a lot of flack online for that one. Women who don't read VSB ended up reading this piece, and it was all of a sudden, and we're a pretty women-friendly space. So I did get a lot of leeway on that because people know that, we're not a space where women can feel comfortable coming and reading VSB without feeling like you're reading a bunch of dudes who just hate women or anything like that. So anyway, that's one that immediately jumps out in my mind because it was just dumb. And as a writer, that is the struggle of having a publish button without any oversight or without having to have anybody read the things that you write before you put them up. You can accidentally say something really dumb permanently. Right. And then you think about it after oh, I probably shouldn't have done it. So, it's right. That was one that immediately jumps to my mind, but there are tons.
For sure. Malcolm has a question for you, and while Malcolm asks a question, we have our next person come to the microphone.
So I was thinking, you guys have been at this for a while. You were right at the cusp of social media becoming a real thing. Mm-hmm. And at the time, blogging was something only soccer moms did, right? It wasn't really a big deal to people yet. But now all of a sudden, social media has given pretty much everybody a platform to become an expert on something.
Everything.
Or everything, right? So what effect has the rise of social media and the presence of social media everywhere had on you guys' audience, if at all? Has it helped? Has it hurt? Kind of how,
social media has absolutely helped us. The ability to share articles. It helps that we're not idiots or that we don't come across as idiots, right? So social media just helps amplify our ability to get what we're writing out to more people. Mm-hmm. And it also gives us more accountability. Like the more people can read your pieces, the more people can hold you accountable, hold your feet to the fire. So the ability for, 'cause especially on Facebook, people are brutal on Facebook, yo. So you know, if you put something out there, people are gonna come for you. But what that does in an interesting way is it makes us think more about the things that we write. Like we're more careful about being so flippant about certain things, being so like lackadaisical about things.
Right.
But it also helps generate our ability to write quicker. Because like social media gets on things like this. A story that starts here is dead air, you know, 10 minutes later. So we know about it immediately because everyone's like, oh, this story, boom, let's get on that right now. So it's been helpful for us. It only hurts when we write something dumb and everybody comes for us because everybody shows up at that party, you know what I'm saying?
For sure.
So
We got our next question for our live in studio audience. Step to the mic, sir.
Okay, my name is Jared. I'm from Virginia. I have two questions, one for Panama. How instrumental has your network or building relationships been in creating opportunities for your side hustle?
So because of when Damon and I got started, there was a very small community of like black bloggers. Now, a lot of those people are still prominent in various ways. They moved into other arenas, whereas Damon and I are still we're still in that blog space. But everybody else has moved on to get jobs in other places. But they remember us because they like us. We're cool, we're friends and all that. So our networking and our ability to meet writers and the fact that, that writer community is fairly small, even though it seems like everybody's a writer. What that does is opens up all these other doors. Like writers like, oh, well, I work at this outlet. I'm going to put you in this outlet because I like what you guys are doing. Or, hey, I happen to be working in this office at this university now. Well, we'd like to have you come in and speak. Having a network, having a good network of people, especially in what we're doing, opens up the door for opportunities to make money in different ways. Like that's how you end up doing TV spots or radio spots or, these different ways to amplify your message and push you into new ways. Because let's be real, like writing every day, that is gonna get old at some point. I mean, we've been doing this forever. I mean, it's fun and I really enjoy it. But at some point, there's gonna be a time to kind of figure out how else to do the writing with other things to help amplify that. So, that network I think will be very helpful in making sure that we and I am able to do those things so I can still feed my family happily.
Very good.
My second question is, how do you, what are some tips in how to manage your money when you're trying to start a side hustle so you can try to generate some type of revenue off of it? And that could be for you or Malcolm.
I was going to give that to the expert that's been there, done that, and jumped off that bridge and made a living doing it.
I mean, monetize everything you can, number one. Like, that's the first one. Don't spend more than you make is probably the most important one. So, I'm very fortunate in that VSB, because it's very personality driven with Damon and I, we're able to do other things with it, right? So I'm able to throw parties, but using VSB as a platform to reach people, I can advertise on, I can push those events out or do different types of events or, it's the best way I can say to monetize, or how to manage your money is if you know that there's a side hustle that you have and you know which one that's going to cost money. Like blogging doesn't cost a lot of money, but if you know it's going to cost you money, then you just got to be really good at saving. Like knowing that there's a greater goal here, greater cause here, and I need to be putting money away from that. Because ultimately, like almost every hustle that everybody has costs money in some way, shape, or form, right? Like I don't know how you guys started this thing, but I imagine somewhere along the way you had to pay for mics and all this other stuff to get yourself up and running, but you need to have that capital to do it. I will say this, if you don't have to spend your money, don't spend your money, right? The best money to spend is other people's. And if you can find a way to get other people to believe in your dream, which is way easier than you might think. Like if people believe in you, people will help you get where you're trying to go. And that has been one of the most helpful things for Damon and I because, we shot a pilot for VSB actually, a pilot TV show. We ended up turning it into like a YouTube series or whatever, but we raised $20,000 to do that online. Like we were literally able to we got some big donations, like $5,000 here. Like people put real money into us because they believed in us. So that gets back to your passion, right? If you are passionate about something and people can believe in it, they can see that, they're like, you know what, you believe in what you're gonna do, and I believe you're the person to do what you're gonna do, I'm willing to invest money in you to help you get there. And it's way better to spend other people's money.
Right. Well, Jared, thank you for that question. I feel inspired. We can have the next question come up. We want to remind people you're listening and watching Manage Your Damn Money with Ben and Malcolm. We're talking to Panama Jackson here. We have a couple more questions left for Panama about turning your side hustle into the next level. We have our next question.
Hi, my name is Monica Carter. My question is for Panama. What advice do you have for entrepreneurs who feel that they're in an oversaturated space?
That is a good question. Doesn't stop lawyers from being lawyers, but listen, if you want to go into a space that's oversaturated, which is probably most now, be better than everybody else, right? Like, I know it's a very nebulous thing to say, and it's pretty cliche, but this will be the humble brag. Part of the reason why
like,
Damon and I are where we are is because we are talented. We're good at what we do, right? We are good at what we do. We know that, and we continue to do it at a high level, even when we don't have it. Like, the talent sometimes is able to overtake the fact that we don't have nothing to say, right? So today I might not have anything to say, but I'm funny, so I can just throw something funny up. Now, I might not do as well as something that was like really pressing, but at least it's up there and it exists, right? But we're consistently putting out products. If you're in a saturated space, you have to find a way to stand out. Consistency will do that. Having a version of that product that people really need, right, will do that. Or finding a niche within that oversaturated market will do that too. And honestly, sometimes knowing when to bow out is an important part of being an entrepreneur, right? Like, I would never encourage anybody not to follow their dreams, but the version of the dream that you have might not be the version you need to pursue. And I think it's important to know that sometimes it's important to be able to analyze what you're doing and analyze yourself and realize where I'm at in the process. Like, there are things we've tried to do at VSB we're just not very good at.
Right.
Like, let's be real. Like, we got bought out by a media entity, but the truth is, if we were better at business or in different parts of our lives, maybe we'd be Vice. Right. Maybe we would be able to, be our own media empire. Right. We're good where we are, but who knows what the possibilities could be if we were 25 years old with no kids, no families, or anything like that. So, it's important to be able to just know what your market is, how you're going to get to those people, and going out and finding your market, like actively going out and getting those people. That's a hard thing to do because being a salesperson is really difficult. Right. But you know, I know I'm just saying a bunch of like catchphrases in media. I'm about 2 steps from saying synergy. But what was it? Oh, simpatico, being simpatico. Y'all seen, was that Friends of Benedict? Well, one of the movies, but
For sure.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for that question, and that's gonna actually close up this show. We're gonna wrap up. We want to thank Mr. Wait, what's your real name?
Panama Jackson.
Mr. Quote Unquote Panama Jackson. Thank you, sir, for coming. Really appreciate it. This was a great conversation. We want to remind people you can always catch past episodes of Manage Your Damn Money on Apple Podcasts, SoundCloud, Stitcher, Spotify, and Google Play. And, of course, leave us a review on any of those platforms. That helps us go up in the ratings. If you'd like to ask a question of Malcolm for his Malcolm's Money Minute, send it to us, info@manageyourdamnmoney.com. And, of course, if you want to follow us on social media, Panama, what's your handle?
At Panama Jackson on everything. Or at Very Smart Bros on everything.
Okay, excellent. Malcolm, what's yours?
At Malcolm on Money.
And of course, mine is at MYDM1. And of course, you can catch us on Facebook, facebook.com/Manage Your Damn Money. Thanks to our partners here at Montgomery Community Media and to our crew for another excellent show. And of course, to our first live studio audience, give yourself a hand. This has been another episode of Manage Your Damn Money. Until next time, be good with your money.
Peace.
Peace.